To say the banner system in Genshin Impact is currently having a little bit of a problem is a massive understatement. With the endless parade of new characters that we get, the problem just gets worse and worse. However, don't worry, because if you decided you don't like cryo characters and they just slow down the characters you want actually coming on a banner, don't worry, Hoyoverse agrees with your thinking. You know, triple banners are also a solution to this problem, potentially even quad banners at this point. Certainly better than just, you know, kind of knocking a whole element out of the rotation. There's also another potential solution, which is to retire some old ass characters to the retirement home, aka the standard banner. When you think about doing such a process, you may think of a bunch of different characters, particularly the older ones, the bad ones, the ones that sell worse than the Wii U. And I believe I have a pretty good list of characters that make sense to add to the standard banner that help balance out the weapons and elements, and also maybe add a character from at least each region. So let me kick it off with probably the most obvious one. If anyone ever makes a list like this, I guarantee Albedo probably makes the cut. His sales pretty much non-existent. His constellations, oh, embarrassingly bad. More importantly, he was around for the invention of fire, and he's Geo, which obviously that fills out one Geo slot on the standard banner, making the only one. Yeah, he inflates the sword pool a little bit, but we're just gonna pretend this is Smash Bros and that he's from Fire Emblem. He might also be inflating the Mondstadt pool of characters in the standard banner a little bit as well, but look, if you're gonna like shove a bunch of any region into the standard banner, it better at least be the one that you're plopped down in. From a power perspective, he fits into the standard cast pretty damn well. Well, actually, without Cinnabar Spindle or Chiori's weapon, he's actually probably outclassed by some of the standard banner characters, which, I don't know, I guess that makes him fit in even better. I just think Albedo is a shoo-in. If literally any one character in this entire cast of characters deserves to be relegated to the standard banner, it's Albedo. Let's give Jean an Animo friend, and let's be honest, the Animo cast, not the most appealing picks. Kazuha is old, but I don't think it makes sense to put a character that strong and meta-defining on the standard banner. Sure, it would be a great thing for us players, but from a business perspective for Hoyoverse, it makes no damn sense. That being said, I don't think my actual pick makes too much sense either, and that is Xiao. Some of you might say Venti, and I would agree in a lot of ways, but I really just don't believe that an Archon belongs on the standard banner, even if they are as weak as Venti is in the current meta. Xiao, on the other hand, very story relevant character, but also, look, he is a DPS and he's reasonably powerful, but he takes a lot of limited 5-star supports to actually make good. In some ways, that actually makes him a good character for the standard banner. May not be the greatest and most cohesive character right out the box like some other DPS are, but at the same time, Xiao gives you so much you could potentially work towards. So many characters that could make him powerful, whether it be Cloud Retainer, Farazan, Zhongli, Bennett, Jean with a high enough constellation level. I just can't imagine having a wonderful time if you're brand new to the game and he is the character you get. Sure, you can build him early, but you're not going to have great supports for him. Despite that, I do believe he is the strongest candidate for potentially becoming standard, and perhaps most importantly, he would be the only representation for polearms in all of the 5-star standard characters, which is like, come on, that is just unreal that there is a whole weapon type not represented in standard 5-stars. Next candidate is Ganyu. Ganyu, I think, is probably the perfect starter character. She's powerful. She doesn't rely on supports to do at least okay. You can go frolic about in the fields of Mondstadt, just shooting your charge shot, and you will do respectable damage. A lot better than, quite frankly, a lot of out-of-the-box DPS. Will she scale into the endgame super well? No, not really. It's like she's a little bit outdated in that sense, but she can still do okay. Her supports are rather flexible. If you want to do Melt, you can either do like the classic Xiangling, or you can do Bennett Kazuha, or you can do Nahida Dia. She's even capable of taking advantage of another standard character with Mona, being able to go off into the Morgana team. When it comes to constellations, you compare hers to a unit like Tighnari's, and well, I really don't think hers look too much better, if even better at all. Most importantly, I really just believe that Ganyu is a really good character to start with. Like I said earlier, she is great even without supports. She can do a lot better in the overworld than even some modern DPS can, and that's thanks to the fact that her charge shot does not have a cooldown. You can do it as much as you want and from a pretty goddamn long distance. With the added advantage of being a charge character, meaning that new players don't have to worry about getting gimped by energy. Next up is Kokomi. I will say that I don't think it's necessarily ideal to have 2 Hydro Catalysts on the standard banner, but I do think Kokomi is the best option. Not only would she be the first Inazuman to make the standard banner, which I do think it's nice to have a character from each region, except I'm not going to do Natlan because it's too new. She also just adds another sustain unit into the standard banner, which, well, it just helps with the banner's balance. You know, make sure there's enough self-sustaining units that people can reliably get one, or at least have the chance of one. And while Kooki is a relatively powerful unit in the grand scheme of the meta, she herself is not going to do anything too crazy. But what she excels at is just fitting into so many teams. After all, Hydro is a little bit of a meta powerhouse, and having such a consistent source of on-field Hydro just enables a ton of teams. Then she also has a little bit of a comparison with Mona. Mona is a Hydro support as well, but her constellations keep pushing her towards being a DPS, especially near the end. Kooki's also does the same thing. Kooki's constellations are never something I would recommend, but if you were getting them off the standard banner, that would be pretty cool. It would be nice to eventually build a DPS Kooki with all those cons. On top of all that, she's incredibly easy to build, flexible with artifact sets, and again, just fits into so many teams. She is very good for a new player to encourage them to do so many different things. She's also just a really reliable healer. Next, Yiko. Admittedly, I don't love this pick, but hear me out. We only have 5 Electro 5 stars. One of which is already standard, one is an Archon, and that leaves Cyno, Yiko, and Clarin. Clarin, I really do not believe belongs on the standard banner. I think that's way too generous of Hoyoverse. Cyno, on the other hand, is a war crime to give to newer players. Most people who have been playing for a long time don't even have the characters to make him work, and by work, I mean barely function at all. Look, I love Cyno. I'm a big fan of him as a character and as a playable character. That is up until the moment where I actually start playing Cyno, because you see, Cyno has more usability issues than a pair of scissors. It has blades on both sides of the blades, and instead of handles, it's actually just more blades. It's just all blades. And while that pair of scissors could hypothetically cause a lot of damage, it's just not a fun time trying to use them in the first place. So Yiko, a character that does actually have decently strong cons, which I don't believe should necessarily disqualify somebody from being on the standard, but if they have way too strong of cons, they just kind of look out of place. Yiko, on the other hand, decently powerful cons, but not absurdly powerful, and a character that she herself isn't absurdly powerful either, just very good. And she can also fit into quite a lot of teams, whether you want to do Electrocharge, a Dendro team, I guess Mono Electro if you want to, Overload, she'll be there. I don't really have much more to say about her because she really is here mostly through process of elimination, but I mean, I guess she's from Inazuma. That part's nice. Now on to the second Geo character. Ito may have been considered for a moment, but Ito is just really not a flexible unit, and I believe that makes him pretty mean to give to newer players. Unless you have Zhongli, C6 Goro, and Albedo or Chiori, he's not going to do much, and he's going to feel very bad. So while he may also check other boxes like being an older unit and also selling pretty poorly despite his mass popularity, I just don't think he's a good pick, which leads me to go to Navia. Now, she might be a lot more powerful than the average standard banner character, but I really don't think that should disqualify her. One, she's a Fontaine character, which otherwise would not be here, and also her kit encourages diversity and is one of the only things that actually encourages Crystallize. Besides, without units like Farina and Shieldin, she's not going to break the standard banner's balance entirely. However, her cons definitely would over time. They would be quite a bit better than the average standard banner characters, even with the ones I've included in this list. I just think the diversity of her team building and the flexible playstyle she has makes her a very appealing character for, well, new players to get. She'd be a lot of fun, she's interesting, and I think she would keep people interested in Geo, or at least give them a lot better chance of doing so. Now on to the last candidate, which signifies that at least 2 of each weapon and at least 2 of each element are on the standard banner, and that would be Emily. She fills the second Dendro slot and the second Polearm slot. Now, that isn't the only reason I picked her. Emily is, well, she's a little bit of a weird one because a lot of people avoided her because, well, she had the unfortunate privilege of being released just before Natlan, which obviously everyone was really excited for. Now, aside from her weapon and her element, I do believe the most significant reason that she should be included on the standard banner is the fact that without her, the burning reaction is basically worthless. Want to engage in it, you can always roll for Kaniche as a DPS, but that doesn't help just about anyone take advantage of burning. That is where Emily comes in. Even if you don't want to use her for burning, I'm probably sure she's adequate for other things that Dendro typically does, whether it be like Quick Bloom, Aggravate, or even just trying to do something like a regular Bloom team with Nilou. She's probably at least got to do better than Kole or Dendro Traveler can. But more importantly, she actually makes burn an option, which otherwise is a pretty dead reaction. With these additions, every element would have at least 2 5-stars representing them, and at least every weapon would have a minimum of 2. Overall, that makes the standard banner significantly more balanced, but with 14 characters, you may be asking, well, how the hell would I get exactly what I want? It would be a nightmare with so many different options. The simple answer to that is slap fate points on it and call it a day.
Attaboy!